Okay, so you just heard me mention that tweet, the president talking about Michael Cohen, saying people will flip if the government lets them out of trouble. He thinks Cohen won't do that. Why is the president, though, talking about the notion of Michael Cohen flipping if the president didn't do anything wrong?
You have to look at everything the president has said about Michael Cohen and the FBI raid. He's defending someone who he's worked with and known for a dozen-plus years, Dana, who he thinks is being treated unfairly. Look at what happened this week, a tale of two tales, if you will. You've got Jim Comey on the one hand going out on a big book tour after saying, I don't leak, I'm not sneaky, I don't make any weasel moves, and doing all of the above again and again, including in his memos. More on that in a moment. And then you've got Michael Cohen, who the president believes is being treated unfairly at this moment. Also, the methods really have disturbed the president. He said in the cabinet room when he first got word of the FBI raid almost 2 weeks ago tomorrow that he felt the methods were a, quote, disgrace. And that should concern everyone. Nobody's talked about the contents of the documents. People are speculating and prevaricating, particularly not under oath on TV shows. But the method should concern people. I mean, look at the DNC server. The FBI didn't bother to secure or search the DNC's server when the DNC said no, and it had been hacked. And here, Michael Cohen is subject to a raid by the same organization.
Okay, let me get back to the original question, though, which is, at its core, what does the president have to hide that he is worried that Michael Cohen will flip over? Meaning, what does he have? What information does he have to give?
That wasn't your original question, Dana, respectfully, and that isn't what he's saying in these tweets. In these tweets, he's saying this is a fine family man who he worked with for many years. He thinks he's being treated unfairly.
Well, my initial question was, what does he have to hide if the president didn't do anything wrong? My question is, are you confident, just trying to get at the same answer, the same notion, and see if you can tell me if the president did unequivocally nothing wrong that he is worried that Michael Cohen will tell the feds about?
Dana, the president is, you're asking me, what do I know is in documents over a dozen or so years. I'm telling you that the president's concern has been for Michael Cohen and the way he's been treated. And he has said that again and again in tweets and again with the cameras rolling, with the media in the cabinet room and elsewhere. And why is that? Because I see people go on TV constantly who don't know President Trump at all and say he's loyal to no one but himself. That is completely not true. He stands up for people in his inner circle and people he knows when he thinks they're being treated unfairly. And he's done it again and again. He shows a great sense of loyalty to people whom he thinks is being treated unfairly. But remember, too, this investigation of almost a year was supposed to be about Russian collusion. Look at all the screaming graphics CNN has invested in. Look at all the airtime and the ink spill on this.
But this is separate.
And now we're up in, well, yes, now we're up into different shoots and ladders.
But you said there are people on TV who don't know the president. You are on TV and you know the president quite well. You work for the president and you're here on his behalf and behalf of the White House. Can you tell me that the president is, can you assure the American people that the reason the president isn't tweeting concern about Michael Cohen flipping because he is in potential legal jeopardy given whatever he knows that Michael Cohen has, that the feds now have from that search?
Dana, the president is talking about Michael Cohen here. The SDNY has jurisdiction over this. The Southern District of New York has jurisdiction over this case now. And the president has made very clear that he thinks this is an overwrought process.
Let me go
by the way, also to answer your question very pointedly, this president was told 3 times by Jim Comey privately that he wasn't under investigation by the FBI. Comey decided against revealing that publicly and probably should have, in fairness, just the way he should have told President-elect Trump on January 6th in Trump Tower that his political opponents had funded some phony dossier against him. The Washington Post, of all places, reported less than 2 weeks ago that this president has been told he's not a target of the investigation. So I think we're answering your question in many different ways.
Yes,
you just want to now take it into a different jurisdiction.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I didn't take it in a different jurisdiction.
That's what a process is for.
The president's own Justice Department took it in
but all this
another
diverts attention away from
direction
everything
because
this
they got
president
information that they felt was important enough and that a judge felt was important enough to raid his personal attorney's office.
Dana, all of this, of course, diverts attention and focus away from all the great things this president is doing as president. And I hope CNN will start to cover that a little bit more because the American people certainly do like what's going on, including this president making huge strides in short order toward denuclearizing the
And we are
Korean
going to talk
Peninsula.
about that.
It's a huge issue.
In great detail later, but you talk about diversions. The president is to blame for some of those divergence with his Twitter feed. And one example, I mentioned this, he talked about news media coverage of Michael Cohen. And in that part of that tweet, he said they use non-existent sources and a drugged up loser who hates Michael, a fine person with a wonderful family. Who's he talking about?
I don't know who he's talking about there, but I'm very proud that this president has led the charge like no other president before him to try to bend the curve in the right direction on the roiling crisis next door of opioids and other drug use. He just secured $6 billion in funding in that latest budget. That's an unheard amount of money, historic amount of funding, and we have a whole of government approach in tackling the opioid crisis. President Trump went first. He's inviting everybody to share their stories. We have them up on the whitehouse.gov website, crisisnextdoor.gov. Everybody can share their stories. Really, CNN should go take a look at these stories.
We have, and you know we have. You did.
He went first, but excuse me.
You've done whole interviews on this, and I appreciate that you're talking about the
drunk and
opioid.
drugged up comment. I want to make sure, because I saw people pointed out to me. I certainly didn't see. I enjoyed my Saturday offline, but people who live online were going back and forth about this yesterday. So I do want to say, on behalf of the president, he went first in sharing his story. He talked on October 26th about his brother,
Fred. I agree with that.
To alcoholism at
so
42.
Given that,
so I'm not
why
going
would
to give
he
people an inch on that?
Why would he tweet out attacking somebody as drunk and drugged up as a negative sort of ad hominem attack, and you won't even say who it is?
I don't know who he's referring to there.
Is it appropriate?
But remember,
is it appropriate
he's also
for the
defending
President
Michael
of the
Cohen
United
there
States
too.
to be
Remember,
doing that?
he is also defending Michael Cohen in that tweet as well. He's saying it's somebody who doesn't care for Michael Cohen going and speaking to media sources.
Should the president, just one more on this, if the president's going to tweet something like that, shouldn't he own it and explain it?
He owns it. He owns everything.
If he did, then why wouldn't he say who he's talking about?
You could read the article and make your own. I'm sure CNN will talk about it for the next week. I'm sure there'll be graphics and chyrons and everything else, because after all, this president needs his new Secretary of State confirmed so the chief diplomat can go back over to North Korea and elsewhere to sit down and try to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, which is in everybody's interest. And we're going to make the tax cuts permanent. We want to get this obstruction in the Senate, the president's nominees. He's got over 100 and some nominees just sitting there waiting for a hearing. You've had more cloture votes on this president than all the 4 predecessors combined. It's crazy, but I guess you don't want to talk about it, so I will.
Well, we do talk about it,
this
but
affects
these
the
are,
American people.
But these are, I guess,
Dana, if
you're
the
in a position.
Didn't tweet, what would CNN talk about? I'm incredibly
you know what?
curious.
We would talk a lot more about the issues
But
that he's not diverting from.
You would not, because when he doesn't tweet,
and we do.
You don't anyway.
And we do. But because he's tweeting a lot this weekend, I have to ask you about it, because you're
And
representing
I'm
him.
happy to answer.
You mentioned Comey and that we would talk about him later. So the president repeatedly has called him a liar. Just hours after Comey's memos were released, the president tweeted this: James Comey's memos just out and show clearly that there was no collusion and no obstruction. Also, he leaked classified information. Wow, will the witch hunt continue? So here's my question. If Comey is a liar, how can the memos show that the president is vindicated? How can the president have it both ways?
Very easy. First of all, Comey said conflicting things on his own book tour this week. He can't even keep his story straight when he's out there among what he thinks is going to be a hero's welcome with the mainstream media. Unfortunately, many people, including your own Jake Tapper, pushed back on him, really filleted him last week. This is Jim Comey, who in those memos never says the President of the United States obstructed justice, told the President at least 3 times that he wasn't under investigation. And never in those memos, Dana, does then FBI Director Jim Comey say he's told anybody in the Justice Department that he's concerned about the President's credibility or conduct. He doesn't bother to do that. So he's already a proven leaker and liar. And by the way, ask nobody else, no other than Andrew McCabe, his former number 2, whose attorney this week was pushing back on Jim Comey. And they're arguing about Andrew McCabe now has criminal referral just this week because of lying about leaking to the press. Think about that. Lying about leaking to the press, the number 2 at the FBI, now in a battle with the number 1 at the FBI. They presided over an FBI that never bothered to get the DNC server, to search it, to secure it, never bothered to clean up their act at the highest levels. These people, Strzok and Orr and Page, who are against President Trump.
We're almost out of time. I just want to ask you one question that a lot of people are asking me, probably you too, and that is, what is up with your husband's tweets? Your husband is a very well-respected lawyer, and he's been sending some tweets that have been critical of the administration. Just an example, in response to a tweet he saw saying President Trump's aides are reluctant to speak for him because he contradicts them later. Your husband wrote, "So true, it's absurd."
He writes a lot of things that are also supportive, and he writes a lot of things about corgis and Philadelphia Eagles and sports, too. But the fact is, well, two things I'll say to you. Number one, that, again, that woman who lost the election, whose name I never say on TV anymore, is wrong. That women, I think she said white women, have to listen to their the men in their life to form their own political opinions. Wrong again, lady. Number two, it's fascinating to me that CNN would go there, but it's very good for the whole world to have just witnessed that it's now that it's now fair game what people's how people's spouses and significant others may differ with them. I'm really surprised, but very, in some ways, relieved and gratified to see that. That should really be fun.
No, I actually, first of all, I would ask you that if you were a man and
No,
your
you
wife
wouldn't.
were 1,000% I
No,
would.
no.
And it's not about
There's a
that.
different standard.
It's about questioning, publicly questioning what you are doing for a living in with regard to your boss. And it has nothing to do with your gender.
No, and it has nothing to do with my spouse. And
right, that's why I'm just asking.
Oh, no. You just brought him into this. So this ought to be fun moving forward, Dana.
Okay.
We're now going to talk about other people's spouses and significant others just because they either work in the White House or at CNN. Are we going to do that? Because you just went there.
Yes.
CNN just went there. Look, differences of opinions.
I'm not. By the way, this isn't critical. I'm just asking
about. Of course it was. It was meant to harass and embarrass. But let me just tell you something.
Absolutely not.
Let me just tell you something. By definition, spouses have a difference of opinion when adultery is happening.
More.
By definition, spouses have a difference of opinion when one is, I don't know, draining the joint bank account to support things that maybe the other disagrees with. So this is a fascinating cross the Rubicon moment, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, that certainly was not intended to cross any Rubicon. It was actually intended to be somewhat lighthearted about the fact that we are all grown-ups who have different opinions. But I'm sorry that you took it that.
You said I've got to ask you a question that's on everybody's mind.
It is. It is. It is. I'm sure you hear it too. It is. And it is hard to have two adults in a situation like this, but it is unusual.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
It is unusual.
I'm sorry, it's hard for whom? I'm sorry, back it up.
It is hard. It is hard.
Who are the two adults? My husband
You and
me?
your husband. My point
now
is
you're talking about my marriage again?
I'm not talking about your marriage.
You just said my husband.
Kellyanne, here was my whole point in this.
It's hard for whom?
Is that you are a professional working for the President of the United States. And your husband is a very well-respected lawyer. And my point is that we don't often see, in fact, I don't remember the last time we saw somebody working for the president in a high-profile position when their spouse is saying critical things about them. That is all. That is all.
Well, that, A, is not true. There are other family members of people who work at the White House who certainly don't support the president privately and publicly. But I will tell you this, and there are people who have been in his administration who worked for Democrats or gave money to Democrats. But all that aside, that really is meant to divert attention from, again, the big issues that America cares about. But like I said, CNN chose to go there. I think that's going to be fascinating moving forward. And don't deny that when you just said it must be difficult. I do want you to clarify, though, for the whole worldwide audience, and in fact for me, since you raised me, it's, quote, difficult for whom to have two adults?
No, my point only is that
difficult for my children who are probably watching you right now, because it's not hard for them.
Well, I didn't say
they've already seen a double standard for their mother for 2 years.
It is not about gender. I don't want to have this conversation, and you know that I don't believe that it's about gender.
No, it's not about gender. Hold on. It's not about gender. There's been a different standard for me than there have been for other people. And we bite our tongue plenty because I work for the people of this country, the United States government, the presidency, and the president of the United States. So there's plenty that I don't say. There's plenty that I don't tweet.
Absolutely.
I'll just give you
because you went back here. Because you went there. You were always invited back here. Because you went there, I'll just give an example because you asked. Andrew McCabe. The president went after Andrew McCabe for something that his wife ran as a Democrat, and that had nothing to do with the president.
No. The president knew something early that everybody else is now finding out. The president has excellent instincts, and he knew.
But he didn't
Jim
say
Comey
that.
And Andrew
he talked
McCabe,
about his wife.
You don't know that he didn't say that. He knew that Andrew McCabe could not be trusted. And look what happened just this week. Andrew McCabe, it's admitted now that he lied 4 times, at least 3 under oath, Dana. Criminal referral just this week because he lied about leaking to the media. This is the number 2 at the FBI. This should have everybody concerned. Everybody should go back and look at what the FBI was doing and not doing while Comey and McCabe were in charge of it. And they all thought, if not wanted, the other person to win the election. And that so colored and politicized so much of their actions and their inactions.
Well, as you know, as you mentioned, the Inspector General is